I want to ask you first about some things that have been in the news lately. Some of your colleagues with Gina Haspel have concerns regarding her policies on torture. Do you share those concerns?
I'm concerned about press reports that she was directly involved in a CIA black site in Thailand in administering torture, supervising it, and then in destroying some of the records of what happened there. I look forward to a confirmation hearing where we'll get to hear more of the details about this. I don't serve on the Intelligence Committee, so I don't have a deep background in this, but the press reports are certainly concerning.
Should those press reports turn out to be true, does this disqualify her from the position?
Depending on exactly what her role was, I may well oppose her if that's what comes out in confirmation hearings.
Another issue in the news is that President Trump announcing new sanctions against Russia. Do these go far enough, and what took so long?
Well, I'm glad that President Trump has taken the initiative of sanctioning Russia for interfering in our 2016 election. I'm concerned that it's taken this long. It's taken an additional, really disturbing action by Russia in the United Kingdom, I think, to compel the president to act. But frankly, I'm just going to celebrate the fact that the president's stepping up to Russian aggression.
All right, let's talk about Dodd-Frank, because you supported, along with Republicans, a measure that would weaken parts of Dodd-Frank and provide regulatory relief to banks without the asset threshold of $250 billion. Why did you support this bill?
I've heard for the entire 8 years that I've been a senator from credit unions, community banks, and regional banks that they were being subject to the same level of review and scrutiny, some of the same restrictions as the very largest banks, the ones that genuinely created the financial crisis. I stand firmly behind Dodd-Frank. I think some of the hype, some of the criticism of this bipartisan bill doesn't quite meet the reality. 17 members of our caucus joined in supporting the bill. I do think some of the anxiety in my caucus, some of the criticism has been because they think this is the beginning of unraveling Dodd-Frank. I don't think so. I think this is providing relief to regional and community banks that need it, but it's not the beginning of the end of Dodd-Frank, because I don't think that the Democrats who joined this bill will join in further efforts to change the Dodd-Frank regulatory framework.
Let's talk about some of that criticism. Your colleague, Senator Elizabeth Warren, naming specifically each of the senators who have voted against this. What do you say to that criticism, and what do you say to her in particular, that she's essentially saying you're not looking out for folks, you're looking out for Wall Street and big banks?
Well, there were a number of Democrats who criticized the bill, disagreed with the bill, but managed to do so privately, managed to find ways to talk with their colleagues in a way that allows us to continue working together on other issues. I don't think it's a good sign for there to be public attacks by members of our caucus on each other. Frankly, going back to 2010, part of what made it possible for me to become a senator was that Republicans were having a terrible internal fight between the Tea Party and more traditional Republicans. I don't think we should follow that example.
Do you think there's room in the Democratic Party for there to be folks who are more centrist on the issue of regulatory reform?
There has to be. Senator Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, for example, one of the early supporters of this bill, Senator Joe Donnelly of Indiana. These are folks who, if they're not able to be a part of the Democratic caucus, then there's no chance we're going to be in the majority again. And I think what should unite the Democratic caucus is our opposition to President Trump's agenda and our decision that we want to work together to become the majority. If that's not the case, then we're not going to be in a majority again.
That's a really interesting point, because earlier this week I was in southwestern Pennsylvania, special election in PA Congressional 14. What message should the Democrats take away from Conor Lamb's apparent victory in that he ran as a centrist?
Right. Conor Lamb was successful in the special election in western Pennsylvania because he talked about the issues that matter to the people of his district. He's got a great background and record, a lot of terrific experience to serve in the House of Representatives. And President Trump came to the district twice, members of his family, his vice president. They spent $10 million on this district, and still Conor Lamb won. I think that's because he listened to the district and he talked about the things that matter to them, to fighting for good jobs and to working across the aisle.
Finally, just want to get your take on something else, the development, shakeups at the White House. Secretary Tillerson out. Looks like Mike Pompeo, well, he has been nominated by the president. Do you have thoughts on Director Pompeo? And what do you make of that?
I don't know CIA Director Mike Pompeo well. I've met him a few times. I look forward to the confirmation hearings in the Foreign Relations Committee on which I serve. I'll be pressing him for the administration and for Director Pompeo to be forthcoming with things we were promised in the confirmation hearing for Secretary Tillerson 14 months ago, a clear strategy on how we're going to confront Russia, Iran, how we're going to work with North Korea and China. This is a very important time for the Secretary of State and for the Department of State. It's my hope that President Trump's next nominee, Director Pompeo, will work well with Congress and that we'll be able to craft a path forward. But we'll have to wait for those confirmation hearings to see.
Quickly, I have to ask you, do you think it's a smart idea for President Trump to be meeting with dictator Kim Jong-un?
You know, it depends. I think there should be some red lines. I think he needs to be well prepared. I think the president is showing some boldness and taking advantage of an opportunity created by his aggressive stance towards North Korea. My concern is that President Trump, if ill-prepared, may go, have a brief meeting, sign some very superficial framework, come back, hand it to the diplomats and say, you guys work out the details. That would not be a good outcome. No president has met with a dictator of North Korea. It's a big win for Kim Jong-un to get on the world stage and to sit with President Trump. He needs to go into that meeting well prepared and clear-eyed about what we're trying to get done. I'll make one other comment. President Trump has been threatening to tear up the Iran deal in May. If he does so, don't you think Kim Jong-un is going to be much less likely to enter into the kind of agreement that involves giving up nuclear weapons, opening up his country to inspections, exactly what Iran did, if he sees that the United States doesn't hold up a deal like that just 2 years later?